you all knew exactly what the ad was. The Prime Minister knew, everybody knew.
He saw the ad before I put it out, so did his chief of staff.
Carney, what the hell's going on here? When Donald Trump terminated trade negotiations with Canada after learning of an anti-tariff ad that was created and distributed by Doug Ford's provincial government, many, including us, speculated that it was impossible that Mark Carney didn't know about it. Well, we don't have to speculate any longer, because now we have the answer, as well as what the impact of the ad was itself. Let's take a look. Carney mum on whether he saw Ontario's anti-tariff ad beforehand. PMO says there will be no further comment on the Ontario government ad that derailed US trade talks. The question of whether or not the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff saw and approved, either directly or tacitly, an Ontario government anti-tariff ad that set off US President Donald Trump followed Mark Carney to Singapore on Tuesday. The Prime Minister's office said there would be no further comment on the television ad, which last week led to the meltdown of sectoral trade negotiations with the United States. Speaking on background, a senior federal official continued to place the responsibility for the marketing campaign on the government of Ontario, Premier Doug Ford, despite the Prime Minister's assurance that Ottawa is in charge of negotiations. Quote, "This decision was made by the government of Ontario, and the federal government was not involved in the production or distribution of this ad," end quote, said the official. Now, this was at the bottom of this article, and there's only one sentence on this, which is telling in itself. Additionally, Trump accused Canada of interfering with U.S. domestic legal processes, saying the ad campaign was timed to influence the upcoming U.S. Supreme Court case regarding his tariff powers. And this is what we've been saying. This is foreign interference, or at minimum, foreign influence on the U.S. legal process. And we hate that being done up here, so why are we allowing it to be done down there? Never mind the fact that it's being paid for by $75 million of Ontario taxpayer money. So there's not too many people that I know in Ontario that is happy about this ad and happy that our taxpayer money actually went to it. But that's not the focus of this video. The focus of this video is the fact that when this came out and Trump terminated the negotiations, we and many others had said, come on, there is no possible way that Mark Carney didn't know about this. There must have been conversations. He must have showed it to him. He must have known that this was coming. After all, Mark Carney kept talking about this Team Canada BS that has been following along ever since he had that premier's meeting where he tried to convince everybody that, look, I'm here. Now everybody is playing in the sandbox like good little children. Well, that lasted about a day now, didn't it? So there's no way he didn't know. And now we actually have somebody admitting it. Who?
How are relations with the Prime Minister? Are things strained now because of what's happened?
Not at all. He saw the ad before I put it out, so did his chief of staff. They both saw it, and we moved forward on it. But again, we achieved our goal. As we say, mission accomplished. It was done. They're talking about it in the U.S., and they weren't talking about it before I put the ad on, so...
Leave it to Ford to try and throw anybody under the bus that he can. So in this case, he's saying, oh yeah, the Prime Minister knew. He saw it. He saw it and showed us his chief of staff. Okay, so before the ad even made it to the networks, Ford said, hey, Mark Carney, would you mind taking a look at this? Maybe have your chief of staff take a look at this as well. So they saw this, and what? They just said, oh, that's an ad. Really? Well, some more contacts came out that really put all of this in perspective. And it makes you wonder, Carney, What the hell's going on here?
Have you had any contact with President Trump since Thursday?
I have not.
Given that President Trump said today on Air Force One, I don't know if you heard this, but in the last hour he said he doesn't plan to meet with you for a long time. Is it worth continuing to pursue a discussion, a meeting, a phone call with him at this point?
I didn't see the comment. Look, we stand ready to sit down with the United States, myself with the President, my colleagues with their colleagues, when the U.S. is ready to sit down. We had made considerable progress on a supplement to the trading relationship that we had, considerable progress in the areas of steel, aluminum, and energy, associated areas as well. And as I just said, we're ready to sit down when they are ready to do that. If they're not ready to do that, as those comments indicate, then we were always going to do these things, to be clear. We're going to first and foremost build our economy, build it with generational investments, and you will see that not just the scale of the ambition, but the speed with which we put that into effect in the budget on November 4th, and continue to do what we've been doing over the course of the last few days and over the course of recent months, which is to build those other partnerships and deepen those other partnerships on which we're getting very much traction. Thank you.
Next question, Murray.
Hi, Prime Minister. Murray Brewster with
Hi,
CBC News. President Trump says he's canceled these trade talks because he's upset about the Ontario government ad. We've heard from the Business Council of Canada and even some of President Trump's own advisors who suggest the frustration with Canada runs deeper. So is this about the ads or is this about something else?
Well, look, as I say, and there were a series of very detailed, very specific, very comprehensive discussions, negotiations on the areas I just listed to in response to the previous question, up until the point of those ads running. First point. Second point, I would suggest you take the president at his word for his reason. And that is the reason why, from the perspective of the federal government, which I'm responsible, we stand ready to pick up on those discussions when the United States wishes to pick up on those discussions. So those in the room, those exchanging term sheets, those having the discussions about specific areas where we can make mutual progress to the benefit of workers and businesses and communities in our respective countries, had been making progress. Those ads came, the president had the reactions which you have seen, made the decisions that he has made, which, you know, those are his decisions to take, and we're in the situation we're in.
Okay, there's a lot in there. A lot was said, a lot was unsaid, and there was so much implied. So let's break that down. So the first thing he talks about is the fact that they were making considerable progress on a deal. And the way he frames this is, well, you know, we almost had a deal done. So, you know, we'll just wait. We'll wait. You know, he's trying to position himself like, you know, we're the adult in the room. We're the mature people. There's one huge problem with all this. He hasn't come out and said Ford's lying, right? Has not come out and said anything about that. In fact, as we read, the Prime Minister's office has said, we're not saying anything else. Stop asking questions. Pardon me? Sounds like the Mark Carney we know. I'm not going to be held accountable for anything. So he hasn't come out and said that Ford was lying about the fact that Carney knew about this and the Chief of Staff knew about this. Okay? So that's point number one. I'm doing Mark Carney here. First point. Second point. The second point is he just told everybody at this international news conference that they were almost at the point where they had a deal. Okay. Third point. If that's true, and if Doug Ford is also accurate in saying that the Prime Minister knew, the Prime Minister saw the ad. Why would Mark Carney not say to Ford, excuse me, Mr. Ford, we are almost at the point where we have a deal, and that's going to benefit you, and it's going to benefit the rest of Canada, so maybe it's not a good time to actually put this ad forward. Why would he not say that? And if you assume that Mark Carney is a competent businessman, and you assume that he's an experienced banker, and you assume that he's a genius economist, you would have to assume that that would be something that he would say. So, all that being true, why did he not? Either they were not on the verge of a deal, or maybe they were, but they were being forced into a deal that they didn't like. And they did a political calculation and said, you know what? We are going to get hammered at home if we accept this deal, and there's no way out of the negotiating postures that we're in. So why don't we make the public think that this is Trump's fault? Or at worst, Doug Ford's fault. A conservative, right? It's the nasty conservative, Doug Ford, bickering with the nasty Republican Donald Trump, and then the liberals get to say, oh, we're the adults in the room and we stand at the ready. This is what I'm wondering. Now, we don't have any proof on this, but it would sure make all of this make sense, especially since Carney has seen the ad. So you have that. So this is most likely a very shrewd political maneuver by Mark Carney. Now, he may not have counted on the fact that it blew up as much as it did, but this lets him say a couple things. It allows him to push off the fact that there is no deal for a while, because maybe there wasn't any progress at all. And now he can come back and say that there was. And who's going to refute that, right? And he gets to blame Donald Trump and try and get everyone riled up. And he said something specific there, because the media said, well, what do you think about Trump's comments? And he said, well, I think you should take Donald Trump at his word, right? He's actively encouraging the media to rile everybody up and pay attention to what Donald Trump is saying. I encourage you to take the president at his word. That's what he said. So you have to ask all of these questions from all of these different angles when something like this happens. So number one, Carney knew about it. Ford told everybody that he knew about it. Carney's chief of staff knew about it. And they let it go ahead. They didn't try and stop Ford from running it. Ford has said that as well. Okay, we'll take Ford at his word. And now the PMO is saying, no more questions. Thank you very much. There's some really sketchy things that went on behind the scenes on this, folks. You can bet. Now, what's the impact on this? Well, you heard a little bit about it from the reporters, but let's hear it from the man himself.
And Trump himself is making it clear that he will continue giving Carney the cold shoulder.
Whether it's provincial or Canada itself, they all knew exactly what the ad was. The Prime Minister knew, everybody knew. The Prime Minister knew what the ad was before it went.
Will you see him in APEC? Do you want to meet with him?
I don't want to meet with him. No, I'm not going to be meeting with him for a while. No. I'm very happy with the deal we have right now with Canada. We're going to let it ride.
Why wouldn't Trump be happy with the deal? There's virtually no tariffs on any American stuff. Mark Carney's taken them all off. So of course he's happy with the deal. Mark Carney's the one that seems to be the problem here. But again, the media keeps focusing on it's the ad, it's the ad, it's the ad. The ad is a symptom of the overall issue. And we've heard Trump's own people, and we've also heard Trump himself talk about this. His own people have talked about the liberal policies over the last 10 years, the liberals cozying up to China, the liberal government saying, we're going to arrest the Prime Minister of Israel if he ever sets foot on our soil. Key U.S. ally. And he's also upset that this is interfering or at the very least influencing a Supreme Court case about the tariffs that's actively going on. It's one thing if you comment about it in Canada, but it's another thing entirely when you create a piece of propaganda, which is what this was, and then you broadcast that to the American public. And then you say, mission accomplished. You see the look on Mark Carney's face when he's talking about this. He seems to think that he's at a mission accomplished phase of this as well. He's going to try and tell everybody, look, it's big bad Trump all over again. And every couple months, he's like, you should be scared of Trump. You should be scared of Trump. You should be scared of Trump. Because that is going to be his only leverage over the Canadian people. But as we say, the polls are starting to shift. People are becoming desensitized to what Donald Trump is saying about Canada. Because this is the issue. When you say something over and over and over and over again, people become numb to it. So people aren't really going to believe the cry wolf from Mark Carney for very much longer. We're starting to see it in the polls. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when this budget comes out. Because it's going to paint Mark Carney as not the fiscally responsible guy. It's going to be painting him as Trudeau 2.0, the kid in the candy store that loves spending other people's money while not spending any of his own. Because is Mark Carney's money in Canada? Hell no. Mark Carney's money is all down in the United States. And here's one more nugget for everybody. He must be really happy about his stock options with Brookfield. Why? Because Brookfield, Westinghouse, remember that company that he mentioned during the leadership debate? Yeah, Westinghouse.
I have one more question. Do we have to speed up the development of nuclear power?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And for a couple of reasons.
Across Quebec, in Ontario?
Well, yeah. It's a choice that Quebec and the provinces will make. But we have a major advantage here in Canada. We have uranium. We have big nuclear companies, including Westinghouse, Candu, and others.
You want to support nuclear power, smaller reactors, which are more dangerous, by the way. And Brookfield has investments in Westinghouse.
Yeah, them. Westinghouse and Camco, who are all in bed together in the nuclear industry. Yeah, they just signed an $80 billion building agreement with the U.S. government. So I think Carney's probably going to be in a pretty good mood today watching those stock options mature in value.